Gilmore, who was convicted of murdering 2 people in Utah County, became the first person to be executed.
I thought of Gary Gilmore. They asked him if he had any last words, and he said, let's do it.
Gary, you commit a murder on Monday. You commit a murder on Tuesday. I wasn't about to wait till Wednesday rolled around.
It was a warm July night in 1976, the kind of night when small towns in Utah settle into their quiet routines. Gas stations closed early, the streets emptied out, and the desert air carried a strange stillness. But somewhere out there, a man named Gary Gilmore was driving through that silence, angry, reckless, and armed. He had just been released from prison after spending most of his life behind bars. To some, he looked like a man ready to start over, but to those who knew him well, it was only a matter of time before Gary's darkness found a way out. And when it did, it shocked an entire nation, not just for the crimes he committed, but for what he demanded afterward. Body Gary Mark Gilmore's life began in the kind of chaos that leaves marks you can't always see. He was born in McCamey, Texas in 1940 to a family that looked ordinary from the outside, but inside was filled with violence, fear, and emotional neglect. His father, Frank Gilmore, was a con man who sold fake insurance policies and carried secrets like scars. His mother, Bessie, was quiet but emotionally distant, a woman hardened by years of disappointment. Gary and his brothers grew up watching fights that didn't end until someone was bleeding. By the time Gary was 10, he'd already learned that survival came from rebellion. He stole, lied, and fought his way through childhood, not because he wanted to, but because no one ever taught him how to do anything else. Teachers called him bright, but dangerous. He was the kind of boy who could charm you with a joke and then destroy something you loved a minute later. It was as if 2 versions of Gary lived inside one body, one trying to fit in, the other waiting to explode. At 14, he was sent to reform school for theft. By 18, he was stealing cars across state lines, and it marked his first federal offense. He told one psychologist, "I'm not crazy, I just don't care." And that became the pattern. Arrest, prison, release, repeat. Every time he got out, he promised to change. Every time, he found himself back behind bars. By 1976, Gary had spent half his life locked up, 18 years of his 35 on Earth. When he was finally paroled that spring, it was like dropping a storm into a quiet town. His cousin Brenda was the only one willing to take him in. She described him as intense, like he carried electricity in his body. Gary tried to play normal, fixing cars, getting odd jobs, and pretending to be reformed. But normal never lasted long with him. Then came Nicole Barrett, a 19-year-old single mother with a soft heart and a wild streak. They met at a bar, and the connection was instant, fast, volatile, and doomed. To Nicole, Gary seemed exciting, older, bold, passionate. To Gary, she was salvation, someone who might finally love him enough to quiet the chaos inside. But within weeks, their love turned toxic. They fought constantly, broke up, got back together, and made threats neither really meant. Gary became possessive, jealous, and paranoid. When she tried to leave, he begged. When she stayed, he raged. And under all of it, a familiar shadow was growing. Anger, resentment, the belief that the world owed him something. That summer, it finally erupted. July 19th, 1976. It was one of those sticky Utah nights where even the air feels restless. At around 8:30 p.m., Gary drove his cousin's truck into Orem. He'd been drinking, arguing with Nicole, and spiraling all day. He stopped at a gas station, Motive Service Station, where 24-year-old Max Jensen was finishing his shift. Max was the kind of person everyone liked, newly married, mild-mannered, studying to become a minister. Gary walked in wearing a leather jacket and a cold stare. He pulled a .22 caliber pistol and demanded cash. Jensen handed it over without hesitation, calm, polite, terrified. Then Gary told him to lie face down on the ground. There was no struggle, no provocation. And then, without a word, he pulled the trigger. The bullet struck Jensen in the back of the head. He died instantly. Gary drove away, leaving the body on the floor, the cash still in his hand, and the world forever changed for Jensen's young wife. But it wasn't over. The next night, July 20th, the cycle repeated. This time at the City Center Motel in Provo. Inside, the night manager, Benny Bushnell, was working late. He was a family man, responsible, quiet, saving up for his kids' college fund. Gilmore entered, cool as ever, with that same pistol. He demanded the money. Bushnell opened the cash drawer, did exactly what he was told. And still, Gary shot him in the head. 2 murders, 2 nights. No reason, no mercy. Police would later say there was a strange stillness to Gilmore's actions, like he wasn't angry, just empty. He didn't run fast or plan carefully. He didn't even hide the gun properly. It was as if part of him wanted to be caught or couldn't tell the difference anymore between living free and dying fast. Later, when investigators asked him why he did it, Gilmore shrugged and said, "Because I felt like it." Those 5 words, detached, emotionless, summed up the chaos of his entire life. After the murders, Gary tried to hide his tracks, but his mistakes piled up fast. He left blood on his clothes. He used the same gun for both killings. And when he asked Nicole's cousin to get rid of the weapon, she instead went to the police. Within days, authorities launched a statewide manhunt, roadblocks, helicopters, and police checkpoints stretched across Utah. Gary Gilmore, a career criminal turned double murderer, was now the most wanted man in the state. He didn't make it far. Cornered and desperate, he attempted to flee, but police shot him in the hand during the chase. Bleeding and defeated, Gilmore was finally captured. At his trial, he didn't beg for mercy. In fact, he did the opposite. He refused to appeal his death sentence. He told the court and the world that he wanted to die. In his words, "It's been an ordeal. Let's do it." Those 4 words, "Let's do it," would soon become some of the most infamous in modern history. For the first time in nearly a decade, America was about to carry out an execution. Since 1967, a nationwide moratorium had effectively frozen the death penalty. Now, in 1976, the Supreme Court reinstated it, and Gary Gilmore volunteered to be first. Newspapers around the world descended on Utah. Reporters called it the return of the death penalty, while others called it a suicide by state. As appeals were filed on his behalf, some without his consent, Gilmore became combative. He refused lawyers, attacked guards, and even attempted suicide twice inside his cell. Meanwhile, his relationship with Nicole Barrett turned into a dark obsession. The two shared a twisted connection: love letters, phone calls, and a chilling suicide pact. Nicole attempted to end her life. She survived. Gilmore didn't get the chance. As the execution date drew closer, the debate around him grew louder. Was he a monster who deserved to die? Or a broken man the system had created, now forcing society to look in the mirror? It was January 17th, 1977. Just before dawn, Gary Gilmore was led into a small room at the Utah State Prison. He wore a simple shirt. His face was calm, almost peaceful. 5 men stood behind a curtain with rifles. Only one rifle held a live round, so no one would know who fired the fatal shot. When asked for his final words, Gary looked straight ahead and said, "Let's do it." The shots rang out. Within moments, his body went still. And just like that, the United States had executed its first prisoner in nearly 10 years. Outside the prison, protesters clashed, some cheering, others holding candles. America was divided, and Gary Gilmore had become both a symbol and a question mark. Gary Gilmore's death didn't end with him. His case reignited the national debate over capital punishment, shaping laws and politics for decades to come. But there was another strange twist, one that seeped into pop culture. A decade later, a creative executive at Nike remembered hearing about Gilmore's final words. He changed them slightly for a slogan. And that's how "Just Do It" was born. A phrase meant to inspire achievement, rooted in a killer's final breath. Gary Gilmore's story isn't just about violence. It's about choices, his, the court's, and the country's. He killed 2 innocent men. He demanded death. And in doing so, he forced America to confront its own beliefs about justice and vengeance. Some called it closure. Others called it cruelty. But for many, it was a haunting reminder that the line between punishment and revenge can be razor thin. The Gary Gilmore case ended in 1977, but the echoes of that firing squad still linger today in every courtroom debate, in every state that still carries out executions, and in every moral question that starts with, what do we owe the people we've lost? Stories like this aren't just about crime, they're about humanity and how easily it slips away. If you believe these stories deserve to be told, the ones that make us question, reflect, and remember, stay tuned and be with us. There are more truths waiting to be uncovered.